Hey guys, and welcome to today's video. Now today's video is going to be all about feelings, and I know that sounds totally emotional and just not a very nice thing to talk about, but that's a big part of a mental illness, is the feelings you feel and how you deal with those feelings. I think when you have a mental illness, you have so many emotions that a lot of the time you have no clue what you're feeling and why you're feeling it and how to sort of solve those feelings. So you tend to just try and push them away and do anything you can to ignore them. And you can be very ashamed of the feelings you feel. I know I still get very ashamed of what I feel sometimes, and I don't want to talk about them. I don't want anyone to know about them. And I just, even now, after loads of therapy and years of going through this, even now, still today, when I feel something that I'm not unsure why I feel that, or it's a new feeling, or it just makes me so scared or lost, I try and push that feeling away and just not deal with it. But when you have a mental illness, you can't really keep pushing it away, because the longer you push it away and push it down, eventually it's all going to erupt like a giant volcano, and it's just going to be unmanageable. And that's sort of what happened to me. Was I kept pushing down since probably childhood. Anything negative, anything bad, anything traumatic that I went through, I pushed down. I didn't deal with it, and I just sort of locked it away, and just I didn't want to deal with it. And eventually things just pile up, and eventually everything's going to explode. And that's sort of what happened with me. Everything just sort of came out at once, and it became this unmanageable mess that I am still trying to clean up today. They say that the most common thing to do to help your mental illness is to talk about your feelings. And I was very sort of on the fence, and I think I still am on the fence, because even though I go to therapy and I do the support group and I talk about my feelings, I am still very much on the fence on whether or not it helps. I mean, I know it helps because I have seen a big improvement, but it also, it's hard work, and it's a hard thing to go through, having to dig up every traumatic thing you've gone through and deal with it and feel that pain. And sometimes talking about it can make it seem so much more real, and it can make the feeling stronger, and it just, talking about it can sometimes make the problem worse at first. So even now, after a lot of therapy, I still am on the fence of whether or not talking about everything is a good thing. Now, I go to therapy and I talk about my feelings, and I deal with my emotions and events that are not really helping my mental illness, and sort of help me find ways to cope with that. And it's true, it does help, but it's hard, because while you're trying to fight through the pain and the emotions you're feeling right now, to sort of help resolve those feelings you're feeling right now, you have to go back in the past and look back and think about what could be causing those, what happened back then that can be causing those feelings now. And it's hard, it is really hard to go back in your lifetime and relive some of the toughest moments of your life and try to find a way to accept why they happened and deal with the pain, and then deal with how it's affecting your life now. And even today, I still have a very hard time dealing with why my past is affecting my future. Sometimes you don't even have to talk out loud. I know even now I still find it hard to talk about my feelings, believe it or not, even though I talk to you guys. There are some feelings that I do not talk about, and there are some incidents that I do not talk about, and I haven't even gone into even in therapy. And I think sometimes there are just things that you keep so closed off that you just don't want anyone to know because you're embarrassed or you're ashamed, or it's just, you know, it's going to be so hard to go through and live through. And recently my mum has gone old Bridget Jones and started a diary, and she is loving it and saying how much it's helping. And I mean, I know it's only like the middle of January and, you know, she might forget it by the end of the year, but it got me thinking about how a lot of therapists and a lot of psychologists and all that say that keeping a journal or a diary helps people who have like depression or any sort of mental illness to get out their feelings, and feelings they don't necessarily want to talk out aloud. And I'm not sure, because I say my feelings out loud to my therapist, I say my feelings out loud to you, but there are some feelings that you hide away and you keep close to your chest. And I know that if I were to write them down on paper, to then look back one day, or to then just even write them down, I'd feel, it might feel good to get them out on paper, but for me personally, I'd be so scared that someone else would find it and that people would know how messed up I really am and how sad I really am. And I find it better to talk, I think, about my feelings, purely just because I can control it better, because I can sort of stop the conversation and sort of backtrack and do that. Whereas if I were to write it down, I knew that I would get too into it and that I would start and I would sort of set goals of only writing certain things and not letting too much emotions out. But I know that eventually it all comes spilling out, and it may feel good to get those dark emotions out that a lot of us hide and a lot of us don't want anyone to see. But for me personally, I would be petrified that another person would read that, or in the future to go back and look at that and see how messed up I was. So I don't know if you guys keep journals or diaries. Let me know, and let me know if it helps you, because I am on the fence on whether or not I should give it a try and see if writing down my feelings and those feelings I hide to myself and that I'm deeply ashamed of, and those thoughts that scare me, if writing them down in a book would help me sort of feel better, and if having that sort of to look on helps anything at all. Because every person I've seen, even a doctor, and you read about it all the time, they always say to keep a journal or a diary because it helps. And I want to give it a go purely because I'm really interested to see if it helps. But I know that in my back of my mind I would be so paranoid that someone's going to find it and that someone's going to see it. And it's just, when you have those feelings and you keep them inside, the only person that feels them and knows them are yourself, whether they're suicidal, whether they're self-harming, whether they're thoughts about being worthless or how much you hate things, or just any sort of dark feelings like that that you hide and hold dear to your chest. Once you put them out on paper, they're on paper, and that's a physical copy that someone could find, could read, whereas no one can read them from your head. And I think that's where I struggle a bit on whether or not it would work or not. But I definitely feel that finding a way to at least let out some feelings is a very good way to go. The longer you push down the feelings and the longer you stay bottled up, the bigger the explosion is going to be, and the harder it's going to be to try and come back from. You have to find a way to get those feelings out, whether it is in a physical copy of a journal or a diary, whether it's talking to a therapist, talking to a friend, a parent, a support group. You have to let some feelings out just so you can feel like that weight on your chest that is crushing you gets a little bit lighter. And just to have someone there, whether it's a diary or a person to just offload to, is an amazing feeling. Because I know that when I go to the therapist or even when I've done this video, I am very, very nervous and sort of like, oh no, what am I going to say, what am I going to do, and I start to panic. But once I've done it and I've come out and I've talked about my feelings and I've talked about things, even though it's out there and someone else knows, that little bit of weight that was on my chest just gets a little bit lighter, and I feel like I can take a breath and just carry on. And that helps. And it doesn't have to be a person, it doesn't have to be a diary, you just have to find some way to let those feelings out. And maybe you're like me and you want to keep those ashamed, scary, lost feelings of whatever close to your chest, but as long as you try and let some feelings out, then I think you're on the right track to working out through your mental illness. Because the longer you keep everything bottled up, the harder it's going to be to clean up the mess. So let me guys know what you use to let out some feelings, whether it's, I don't know, a punching bag, whether it's a therapist, a diary, a journal, and let me know if any of you keep a diary or journal. Does it help to have a physical copy and sort of have that thing to look on and write down your feelings physically? So thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye guys.